The NVIDIA RTX 4080 is here to take on every other GPU on the market besides its bigger brother, the RTX 4090. In many ways, the 4080 is almost identical to the 4090. It is the same size, boasts some insane performance boosts over the 3080, uses a similar crazy power adapter, and even wants to take over the world with the help of DLSS 3. But these cards don't come cheap at all. The RTX 4080 in particular will cost you 34,999 Rand. The model I reviewed in this content is the Gigabyte NVIDIA RTX 4080 OC, the 16GB model, not the 12GB model that NVIDIA cancelled. Gigabyte has a few RTX 4080 models available, including this one, its Aorus OC model, and the Master range. They all pack different designs, but mainly the take is the same. This includes a core clock of 2535MHz, 16GB of GDDR6X RAM, 3rd generation RT cores, and 4th generation Tensor cores. Those unfamiliar with the tech jargon, this RTX 4080 is a beast and sets its own benchmarks in the world of not so top of the range but almost their category. NVIDIA's showcase feature for these new 40 series cards is definitely the DLSS 3 tech, and it definitely performs like a dream. I was honestly impressed by how incredible DLSS 3 is, but more on that later. For the sake of things, I also tested out the same Gigabyte GPU in its RTX 4090 OC variation for reference, just so you can understand how close the 4080 is in comparison to the 4090. This particular card follows Gigabyte's overused GPU design. It comes in the same box and features the same gunmetal color and WindForce technology. If you compare this to, say, an AMD GPU from Gigabyte, it's hard to tell the difference apart from the massive size and chunky heatsinks. The card includes 3 DisplayPort 1.4a ports and 1 HDMI 2.1 port. Both the 4080 and the 4090 are identical in size and design. It is actually hard to tell them apart. I actually had to take down the model number just so I didn't mix the two cards up when I was swapping them around to do tests. There are 3 giant 110mm blade fans slapped on the top and heat sinks all over the show. The fans spin in different directions in order to move heat away from the vapor chamber, and they don't even turn on unless they need to. Gigabyte says they have double the lifespan compared to previous models too, but I doubt you'll ever wear them out anyway. The fans also include RGB that syncs to all your other stuff using RGB Fusion. However, at the time of reviewing, the Gigabyte software wasn't updated to change the lighting, so it just used the default style. This saw the fans light up and flicker depending on the fan's RPM. In the box, you'll get the GPU, some booklets, and the infamous 3 8-pin to 12 VHPWR adapter. Keep in mind that the RTX 4080 uses 3 8-pin power cables, where the RTX 4090 uses 4 8-pin connectors. The GPU uses a bit less power, so it makes sense. However, the recommended power supply is still 850 watts for this Gigabyte card. The GPU also comes with an anti-sag bracket, which I'll get into in a bit. So I initially thought that installing this RTX 4080 would not be a problem because I have one of the biggest gaming cases you can find, the Cooler Master Cosmos C700M. However, I opened up the PC ready to slot this bad boy into the case, and lo and behold, it didn't fit. I spent 5 hours rearranging the entire PC again to make this GPU fit into the case. However, if your case isn't highly modified, then you probably won't have a problem. Fast forward almost an entire day, and installing the RTX 4080 is quite simple, but you'll likely need to use the anti-sag bracket that comes in the box. Actually, I recommend you do. This is installed by removing the 2 screws from your motherboard and replacing these holes with the provided level mounts. I then screwed in the bracket to the board and attached the other to the GPU. Once done, you'll just need to clip the GPU in and tighten the screw onto the mount. I also added a GPU arm under the card for safety due to how my motherboard is arranged in the center of the case. The cabling of course requires the adapter if you don't have one of the very newer power supplies on the market. However, even after rearranging the case and using the cable, it still bent when I closed the door of my PC. I didn't want any fire, so I left the case door open at all times. I highly recommend you do your research before investing in these 40 series cards. They are much bigger than you think, and chances are the PC case door will be a problem. You just don't want to bend these cables. Most of the reports show that the bent cable is causing the fires. I ran a number of tests using the GPU. NVIDIA also sent through some details how to enable DLSS 3 on some supported games. This Gigabyte RTX 4080 already comes overclocked out of the box, which is great for people who just want to plug it in and play. I do need to stress that the DLSS 3 is great, but sadly only available on certain titles. The rollout is going to take much longer than DLSS 2, but from my early results it's going to be worth the wait. In some cases, I saw games perform up to 60% better with DLSS 3 enabled. Cyberpunk 2077, for example, hit well over 110 FPS compared to 60 FPS with DLSS 3 disabled. We are no longer talking about 5 or 6 frame differences here. The gains are out of this world good. DLSS 3 is also backwards compatible, but games that are specifically designed for the new tech will come with an option called frame generation. This works by taking the previous frame and the current frame and generating an interstitial frame in between the two. This does come at the cost of latency though, as these additional frames create additional latency on your PC, but NVIDIA Reflex tries to even that all out. The frame generation can basically double the frame rate of a game, making things look much smoother and feel better to play too. However, it does increase latency slightly, so competitive gamers will likely turn it off and leave Reflex on only. Frame generation also enables Reflex by default because of the extra latency it causes. Here are some of the tests I had from DLSS 3 games enabled and disabled across the 4080 and the 4090. I also tested a few games that don't use DLSS 3 so you can see how they run. The test showed the following scores. You can see from the results that NVIDIA isn't playing around with this DLSS 3 tech. These games are in fact doubled in performance. The latency is also a lot better. However, this is all dependent on your preference, and I think NVIDIA offering these options to gamers is a great opportunity for gamers to fiddle around with how they prefer to play. Throughout my tests, I saw the RTX 4080 hit around 57 degrees Celsius. It also maxed out the GPU clock at 2535 MHz. You can likely get more out of this GPU if you want. This is in comparison to the RTX 4090 that hit 2760 MHz. The RTX 4080 is definitely powerful, and DLSS 3 will likely revolutionize PC gaming. The performance games are exceptional. In fact, the improvements across the board here are truly revolutionary, and NVIDIA has done more than just pump more cores into this GPU. They have worked on fixing CPU bottlenecking, lowering latency, and so much more. The downside is that this is going to take a long time before it makes a difference in the games you actually play, and is also going to cost you a lot of money. I also can't leave this review without mentioning the card size and what a huge inconvenience it was. This tech just isn't approachable for the majority of gamers out there, so keep that in mind. This thing is huge and you'll need a case to fit it into. There's also the price tag, which is just pretty insane. It is also quite a lot cheaper than the RTX 4090, so this 4080 is definitely the better buy if you're looking to spend a ridiculous amount of money on GPUs. But cheaper doesn't really mean more affordable here. In the end, the RTX 4080 is a substantial step forward. Sure, it's weaker than the 4090, but it's definitely the middle ground option thanks to its so-called more affordable price tag. So those are my thoughts on the NVIDIA RTX 4080. Huge thanks to Gigabyte for sending these two GPUs for me to test. I'll leave links in the description below where you can find out more about them. Are you looking to pick these up? Let us know in the comments down below. If you have any questions, also post them down below and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible. Again, thanks for watching guys, and please do consider liking and subscribing for more future content. Also visit www.glitchstoneonline for more gaming and tech news. Until next time, farewell.